Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL graduates. Welcome back to another video. Not quite a game week guide this week because we've got very much a short turnaround between game week 13 and game week 14. So we're going to be going through some of the players that we think you should be looking to be buying ahead of game week 14. Remember, midweek game week. So very much, don't get caught out by the early deadline. Don't get caught out by that quick turnaround, and let's get straight into it.
Okay, then. So, yeah, we're recording this for a little bit of context because it's such a tight turnaround at 2 o'clock on Sunday. So, just after United beat Palace 2-1. So, we haven't seen, a few of the games still left. Obviously, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, West Ham, etc. So, just bear that in mind when we're going through these players if someone gets injured, suspended, etc. Starting off with someone who got suspended, Marcus Senesi obviously picked up his fifth yellow card of the season, which gives him a one-match ban heading into game week 14. So he will miss that Everton at home fixture, which I think is probably the best fixture for a long while now, because Bournemouth fixtures do sort of turn for the bad. There sort of begs the question for him to potentially be sold. I think Bournemouth in recent weeks haven't been as good defensively either. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Is he a sell at the minute now he's got that suspension?
I would genuinely consider the selling with the suspension because there's going to be a lot of game weeks coming up thick and fast. And look, Bournemouth don't look too great defensively, and I mean they never have done this season really, in truth. But some of the fixtures that they played earlier on the season really suited their play style. When we see sort of games like saw against Sunderland, there's opportunity to exploit them on the counter attack. So for me, I'd be looking towards selling because 5 million at this point is quite a lot to be paying for a defender that you don't expect maybe sort of too many clean sheets. So for me, I'd definitely be looking at selling rather than keeping.
Okay, then, so looking ahead at some replacements, Lacroix comes up first. He looks like probably the best option out of that Crystal Palace defence at the moment at 5.1 million. The main reason we say that is because Chris Richards, who is the cheapest, does tend to get rotated midweek. We see it every single week with the Conference League. That might not be the case for the Premier League. We haven't seen that happen yet, but it's just sort of like an asterisk. I probably wouldn't go and buy Chris Richards. Equally, I probably wouldn't sell him as an owner myself. Daniel Munoz is on 4 yellow cards still. He didn't pick one up against Man United, which is obviously a bonus for owners, but it does pose the risk that in a couple of weeks' time, you're going to be in the same situation with sort of Senesi, where he's picked up a one-match ban. So Lacroix sort of fills that sort of middle void, which seems like what he's been doing all season, where he has some attacking threat. Maybe not as much as Munoz, but he also picked up DEFCONs pretty consistently, similar to Chris Richards. I think he hit DEFCON within less than 60 minutes against Manchester United at the weekend. So, yeah, really good performance from him. I think if I was buying fresh personally, Lacroix would probably be the guy for me. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'd say if I was to pick a Palace defender, it probably would be Lacroix. Like you said, with Richards, there's a minutes, Tariq Mitchell could be a good option, as depending on what you can afford and what you can't. But if you are looking at that Palace defender, I think the best option out of the lot is Lacroix. At this point in the season, we need to be looking at players that have got minute security, and that's and we don't want that to be threatened by rotation or even getting accumulating too many yellow cards. So seems to be sort of the least risk adverse option there to go for from the Palace defence.
Okay, then, so the next replacement that you could be looking at is a guy who's just got 16 points in the previous game week. It's Malik Chow. Obviously, he scored 2 goals from set pieces against Everton, which was great for him. They didn't keep the clean sheet, and that's something that Newcastle maybe have been struggling with in recent weeks. Despite really good defensive data on the season, they seem to be conceding that old goal here and there. Hopefully, they can sort of squash that out. I think the next 3 fixtures are fairly good for clean sheet potential, especially with Tottenham at home. Like, their attack has been so poor. I know obviously they scored against Fulham, but for me, I think that's a good fixture for Newcastle in terms of their defensive output. I think they kept a clean sheet against them in the Carabao Cup earlier in the season as well in the same fixture. Burnley at home is obviously good for clean sheets. That's probably your best bet with them being the worst attack in the league. So yeah, I quite like him. He gives you DEFCON potential. Obviously you got set piece threat there as well. Ben, how would you rank him in terms of Crystal Palace, Newcastle defenders?
I'd be more tempted to go towards Malik Chiel, and to go more towards Newcastle because the fixture run for Newcastle is decent. They're a lot more used to the midweek games and the sort of fixture congestion that comes with the Champions League. With Palace, we based off the United game, we're seeing them slow down just a little. Whether they, with their small squad, can sort of keep up and cope with the demands of the Premier League over this really congested period, we'll have to wait and see. But I think the Newcastle assets are definitely going to be of interest to a lot of FPL managers because the fixture run's decent and they are a quality team that is, to be honest, slow starting this season, but have really picked up in the last few weeks and definitely look like a team worth investing in at the moment.
Okay, then. So moving on to some midfielders. Obviously, I don't think there's a need necessarily for midfield transfers at the moment. At the time of recording, anyway, there's no obvious, people to replace. But we do have Afcon on the horizon. Someone like Iliman Ndiaye. Obviously, Ismail Sarr picked up a knock against United. He played through it, but then still had to come off injured. So, yeah, there's maybe a potential there if you're looking for a midfield replacement. I think Saka is probably the top of my shopping list as a non-owner. The fixture run looks really good for Arsenal now. Brentford at home this week is potentially a captaincy option when you look at, Haaland's obviously not returned in 2 games now in a row. And obviously it's a home fixture for Saka. And if Gyökeres is still out for that one, you'd imagine he's the main penalty taker in that regard. Ben, obviously you own Saka. What's your selling point on him? I was surprised to see him have 0 assists so far this season. That seems a bit odd.
Yeah, definitely seems a bit odd. Like he's obviously been, he was very much reliant on some corners, set pieces, that sort of thing. Declan Rice has taken some of them off of him. But yeah, it's definitely surprising to see. We've seen assists, a lot more assists in the Champions League so far, maybe due to sort of lower quality opposition that they're playing against. But for me, I think this price point is a price point you're going to need to invest in over the next few weeks. Particularly with Bukayo Saka at the moment. And then when Chelsea's fixture run gets really good again, Cole Palmer is definitely going to be on the table to invest in. So I think a midfield around the 10.5 million price point is going to be a must over the coming weeks because the minute security is there with these guys, albeit except that, Saka is getting taken off between 60 and 70 minutes for some games that we see. We saw it particularly in last game week where he came off and all of a sudden, that Arsenal bring on a couple of players to win the game. So, yeah, for me, I think he's definitely a really good option. If you've not sort of invested already, then I'd definitely look at considering going for him.
Okay, then. So as mentioned with Sarr, obviously he came off injured. His teammate Jeremy Pino could be a nice sideways option, or just in general a good cheap option. If you're looking at him, only 5.8 million at the moment, and going into that Burnley away fixture, which is obviously really tasty. Fulham away after that, I don't mind either from an attacking point of view. I think he's a decent little option. You can see his expected data in relatively limited minutes so far. So he joined quite late on in the summer transfer window. Is fairly good, to be honest, and with Sarr, obviously, being potentially injured, he'll also be going to AFCON in a couple of weeks' time as well. I think Pino's minutes are secure, even with the fact that they've got, obviously, 2 fixtures every week almost. So, yeah, for me, I really like him. And if I was buying fresh into Palace, sort of midfield, I certainly would be going for Pino over Sarr at the moment. Ben, you used to own him for your wild card. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I owned him for a couple of game weeks, and look, I think it's taken a little time for him to sort of get used to Palace way of playing and to really sort of embed himself into the style. I think we are starting to see the potential that we've been seeing in the European competition so far this season, with Pino seemingly returning in every game that Palace have played in Europe this season and not so much in the Premier League. As we go into sort of that period of Christmas, AFCON and all of that sort of good stuff, I do think Pino will become more and more important as an asset. I think at the price point that he's at the moment, it definitely is attractive to potentially invest into him. Of course, it might be worth waiting a couple of weeks and seeing how Palace come out with AFCON and all that sort of thing. With Sarr potentially injured, it definitely does sort of increase the appeal there.
Okay, then, so on to the last midfielder option for this week. It's going to be Mateus Cunha, and obviously he hasn't played the last 2 game weeks. He's in some form of a concussion protocol, but Amorim has said that he's available for United for that Thursday fixture against West Ham. I think they've missed him massively. I know they got the win against Palace at the weekend, but just in their build-up playing in general, he's so intrinsic to it. Obviously, only the 1 goal so far this season against Chelsea. Been very unlucky probably not to have more than that. I remember the Fulham game where he's had a couple of big chances in that one. I think him playing as a 9, like we saw at the start of the season, is very good for his FPL output. So if you're maybe wanting to get ahead of the curve, obviously this is thinking about Mbumo going to AFCON, Amag going to AFCON. Those guys are going to affect the output as well a little bit. So it's a riskier one, but I think if you're going to want to take a punt maybe on a fairly nice fixture run when you look at those three defences upcoming, I think this is a nice one to go with. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, United as a team is starting to look a little bit more consistent with each week that goes on, which I think is a bonus, and especially with the way United play, Cunha should over the winter period be really sort of getting quite a lot of those minutes. Potentially up top as well. We'll have to wait and see, how long Shesko's out for and that sort of thing. So for me, I think he is a decent asset. Like again, with United's fixture run, not too bad at all either. So for me, I'll definitely be having him on my radar. I'll definitely be keen to see how he gets on midweek as well. And then I think after that West Ham at home fixture, that might be sort of the opportunity then to sort of bandwagon on him a little bit if he performs well.
And then on to the forwards then. We've got Jean-Philippe Mateta up first. He's obviously off the back of a penalty goal against United. 7 goals so far this season from a 9.6 XG. He seems like he has to get maybe 3 big chances to actually finish one at the moment. That's the main sort of caveat with him. He has been, should I say, a little bit wasteful with his chances. When you take out that Bournemouth game where he got the hat-trick and over 3 XG, his data does sort of look a bit maybe underwhelming a touch. Obviously, it'll be 4 goals in about 5 XG, something like that. So, yeah, maybe not as clinical as you'd want him, but I'd always like my FPL assets to be getting the chances at the very least, and put him in that position to be able to score a hat-trick like he did against Bournemouth. Obviously, Burnley away is the reason why he's on this list predominantly. We haven't got another forward yet on this who to buy video, because I think this is the main man if you don't own him already. What's your thoughts on Mateta, Ben?
Yeah, I think a lot of managers will have, Haaland, Thiago, and potentially Mateta. And he seems to be ticking along nicely, despite sort of, maybe sort of needing sort of a few more chances than other strikers. But the good thing is at least he's getting those chances, and I think that's a key important thing. The caveat, I guess, yes, is the chances. There's also the potential of him coming off a little bit earlier in this congested period. But look, I think you sort of can't overthink this one a little bit. He's a good asset. He's ticking along. He's getting goals sort of on a weekly basis. So for me, definitely sort of a big advocate of potentially going with Mateta and 3 up top.
Yeah, I quite like it. I think also with the fact that when Sarr goes away, I think the minutes risk becomes a little bit lesser. They could obviously use Devaney and stuff like that, but for me, I think the minutes will be more secure as we go forward. Obviously, with Sarr being out. So that wraps up who to buy for Game Week 14. Let us know if there's anyone in the comments that you think or thinking about buying that you want our sort of verdict on, and we'll reply to all of you down below.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
We'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.